Collapse of Parenting. Chapter 5. Why are so many kids so fragile? Many college faculty and staff report a noticeable fragility among today's students. Some describe them as teacups, beautiful, but liable to break with the slightest drop. So, what led you to suggest that Aaron should try playing football? I asked Aaron's father, Steve. Actually, it was the nurse practitioner at the pediatrician's office who first brought it up. She showed us how his weight percentile was climbing, but his height percentile wasn't changing. I remember I asked her, "What are you trying to tell us?" And she said, "Aaron is getting overweight." She didn't mention football per se. She just said that Aaron needed to be more active, and she suggested after-school sports. Football was my idea. I played football all through middle school and high school, and it helped me get into shape. It helped me to get strong. So that's where I was coming from. You mentioned that Aaron has always had a talent for video games. How old was Aaron when you first realized that? I asked. Pretty young, Steve said. I remember Aaron was 6 years old. We were playing Madden NFL football. You know that game? I nodded. Aaron beat me by some crazy score. I think the final score was 62-7. He had 62 points. You had 7? I asked. Yep. I was pathetic. I didn't play video games much with him after that, Steve said. I just wasn't in his league. Plus, I never really saw the point. I'd rather go outside and throw a football around, an actual football. So what happened last fall, I asked. I had been nagging Aaron for years about playing football, but he always just ignored me. Then some of his friends, guys he played video games with, announced that they were going to try out for the JV team at school. That's the first time that Aaron had showed any interest in playing the game. So he and I went to the park and we threw the ball around, did some blocking. I told him that he had potential. I wasn't lying. I got a few extra pounds on board, but that's not a bad thing if you're playing the line. I told him how the left tackle position is one of the highest paid positions in the NFL. He thought that was pretty interesting. What happened last fall, I repeated. Aaron was pretty cocky when he went to the tryouts. He thought that being master of Madden NFL football would give him an advantage. But the coach said he wanted to get a sense of who was in shape and who wasn't. So he had them do some sprints. Then he made everyone run a mile, and every boy was timed. Aaron's times in the sprints were terrible, and he took nearly 12 minutes to run 1 mile. The coach said, "Son, I have no idea whether you're going to be able to play this game or not. You're out of shape. I expect to see you back here tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. with the other kids who are out of shape. You'll run another mile around the track, then we'll go to the weight room." What happened? Did Aaron go back the next morning? I asked. Nope. He never went back. That was his first and last foray in any kind of after-school sport. He said, "I'm not a jock. I'll never be a jock. I don't want to be a jock. I'm a gamer." I told him that you can be both an athlete and a gamer. I mentioned that lots of the men who played in the NFL are serious gamers as well. But he wasn't interested. He just retreated into his bedroom, closed the door, and kept on playing the games. "So what's going on now?" I asked. He's just playing more and more. When I ask him what he wants to do with his life, he says he wants to be a professional gamer. He shows me articles online about how these guys who are earning $100,000 a year or more playing video games. And you say, "What can I say?" Steve said. "Maybe that's his passion. That's what he says he really wants. Who am I to tell him that he shouldn't go after his dream? I just want him to be happy." Julia always had a competitive streak. She always wanted to be number 1 in her class. She may have inherited some of that drive from her parents. Her mother is an investment banker and her father is a surgeon. In any case, her parents were proud of the academic honors she earned beginning in elementary school. She was attending the top independent school in the city, a school which routinely sends graduates to the most selective colleges, and she was number 1 in her class, on track to be valedictorian. She was already taking advanced placement, AP courses, in 9th grade and earning A's in every one. When she started 11th grade, she decided to sign up for AP Physics, a course usually taken in 12th grade. But Julia was already thinking of independent study program for 12th grade to do an engineering project at that university. She had decided on her own that taking AP Physics in 11th grade would be just the thing to impress the various people who would have to approve her program. To take the course as a junior, she needed special permission, which she obtained. She has always been at the top, or very near the top, academically, Julia's mom, Jennifer, told me. But that was just marginal superiority. She was earning a 99 when the other kids were earning a 98 or 97. She wanted to do something that would catapult her into another league altogether. She wanted something that would set her apart from the rest, not only in the eyes of college admission officers, but in her own eyes. So that's where this was coming from. What happened? Physics was way harder than she expected it to be. She had never really had any serious difficulty in school before. Everything always came easily to her. Physics was the first subject where she just didn't understand the concepts of the first time around. When did she realize there might be a problem, I asked. The first quiz, Jennifer answered. Prior to that, I think Julia had some notion that maybe everything would be okay. She would be top of the class like always. She was studying really hard. The first quiz destroyed that notion. She got one of the lowest scores in the class, a 74. The teacher met with her afterwards and told her it wasn't too late to drop the class. What happened, I asked. It was the first week of October. I came home from work. She was in the bedroom with her door closed, which is unusual. Usually she leaves her door open. I went to the bedroom door, and I was about to knock, and I heard something I had never heard before. Sobbing. I had not heard her cry like that since she was a toddler. Convulsive, gasping sobs. What did you do? I rushed into the room without knocking. She was on the bed, face down, crying into her pillow. Can you imagine what went through my mind? I didn't know anything about the physics exam. My first thought, to be honest, was that she had been sexually assaulted, that someone had victimized her, because I thought, what else could cause her to be so incredibly upset? So I asked her, are you okay? What happened? What did she tell you? It wasn't easy for her to get the words out, but she managed to explain that she had gotten a low score on the quiz. To be honest, I had to put my hand over my mouth to keep from laughing. I was so relieved. Here I thought she had been the victim of some awful crime, and it was just a low mark on a quiz. But finally I said, oh honey, that's terrible. You must feel so bad. I understand. What happened next? I tried to reassure her. I said that we could hire a tutor to help her. She said she didn't want a tutor. It took me a few days to realize why this was such a big deal. If she couldn't ace physics on her own, then she wasn't the great genius prodigy she had imagined herself to be. So it was pretty wrenching for her. When did she start taking medication? Things just snowballed. I thought that she would come to her senses and put things in perspective. We did get a tutor for her, and I think the tutor was helpful. Her score on the next quiz was a 79. Still not great, but better. She could still pass the course. But I'll get a C, she wailed. There are worse things in life than getting a C in physics, I said. You just don't understand, she said. And the crying spells continued, except now she told me to get out of her bedroom. She didn't want me to try to comfort her. That's when I took her to see the pediatrician. He prescribed Lexapro, 10 milligrams. He said we should try it. Maybe it would help. Did it help? A little. Eventually, she was able to talk about how she was feeling without bursting into tears. She was able to explain how humiliating it was for her to be near the bottom of the class. But by Thanksgiving, she seemed to be slipping back, more withdrawn, moody all the time. So we decided to take her to the psychiatrist. Actually, the pediatrician suggested it. What did the psychiatrist say? The psychiatrist spent only a few minutes with us. I was hoping for a more thorough evaluation, but he didn't seem to think it was necessary. He commented adding risperidol. He said that when an SSRI like Lexapro doesn't work, he likes to add risperidol on the top of the Lexapro. I looked it up online. I just freaked out when I read the side effects of risperidol. Weight gain, diabetes. That's why I decided to come see you for a second opinion. I read that essay you wrote for the New York Times about being skeptical about medications. I can tell you many stories which are similar to Aaron's story and Julia's story. Stories which have been relayed to me by parents or that I have observed firsthand in my role as a physician. The common thread connecting Aaron, the out-of-the-shape gamer, to Julia, the would-be engineer, is fragility. When Aaron came home from the tryout, Why didn't he take up the coach's challenge to return, to try harder? When Julia discovered that she wasn't as smart as she thought, why did she collapse? The answer in both cases is that these kids are fragile. It doesn't take much for them to give up and retreat, as Aaron did, or to fall apart, as Julia did. Fragility has become a characteristic of American children and teenagers to an extent unknown 25 years ago. That's what I'm seeing in the office today, and what I did not see in the office years ago. But besides my observations and experience as a physician over the past quarter century, several lines of evidence support my claim that young Americans are more fragile in comparison with young Americans from 2 or 3 decades ago. The first and most obvious evidence is the extraordinary rise in the proportion of young Americans diagnosed and treated today for anxiety and depression.